taking a critical look at the gaming news of the week. This is Augmented Reality, presented by the Triple S League.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Augmented Reality podcast for May 4th, 2019. Oh, it's Star Wars Day. Didn't even realize that. May the 4th be with you. Welcome, everybody. This is the Augmented Reality podcast presented by the Triple S League. This is the Saturday morning edition of the show, and this is your source for news, leaks, and insights about games and the gaming industry. Sorry about the late start and the problem with the start time. Totally my fault. I will be wearing a dunce cap for the entire podcast. I know, we can't prove that to you, but you'll just have to trust me that I'm wearing a big old cone on my head right now, like a big old pyramid head or something. My name is Ashenity, and I'm here as always. I should have said, my name is Obsidian, and it's my fault that the podcast started late. Anyway, I'm here with Obsidian as always. How are you doing this morning? Good, sir?
Pretty good. I am upping my Omicron levels, so it's good. And we have lots of small news stuff that's happening, and some pretty big stuff too that's starting to roll out. So this is going to be a real fun month overall. So.
Oh, absolutely. And we also have the Mad Queen with us. I think you heard her laughing earlier, but I'll introduce her officially here. We have the Mad Queen of the Mad Queen Show, excellent Cyberpunk 2077 channel. Actually, I'd say Cyberpunk in general channel, because you cover all kinds of... You're covering Cyberpunk Red and general Cyberpunk lore, which is all connected, as we're going to be talking about today. It's all one big old timeline. But anyway, welcome, Mad Queen. How are you doing today? It's not morning for you. It's early afternoon, isn't it? Or mid-afternoon.
Yes, it's 3 p.m. in here, but I believe that mentally I didn't wake up yet. I have the head in the videos that I'm preparing for E3, and I'm totally stressed with that. But the good stress, not the bad stress.
There's a good stress?
Yes, the one where you are so pumped and you want to keep going, and you're having so much fun, but you can't stop. This kind of stress.
Well, we appreciate you making the time for us this morning. Hello to everybody who is active in the live chat already. HTK Gaming with the generous super chat right out of the gate. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Yum Lemon Kebab. Excuse me. Yum Lemon Kebabs. Niv Aussie. F Chopin. 1000. Ali Mahfouz. Dark Hollow. Niv Aussie. I think I said you already. George Moore says, hello, been catching the community podcast during the beginning. I normally sit in the background. Well, welcome to our podcast, and we're glad you're enjoying the community podcast as well, which, by the way, if anyone's wondering, that is the Cyberpunk 2077 community podcast, airs every Sunday, and that is a collaboration between us and the Mad Queen and the Neon Arcade and Last Known Meal. Three other excellent channels joining us, and it rotates every week between all of the four channels. So, excellent. Glad you're enjoying that. That's definitely been a popular addition to the whole thing. It's very exciting that the community's coming together about all this, and I can't wait to see what happens when the game actually releases. But hello, Hidden Boss, Blunt Man, Bill Ashby, Overlord 580. I think I got everybody. If I missed you, my apologies. Alod's Ginger, getting in just under the wire there for the shout-out. Welcome. All right, everybody, lots to talk about today. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be talking about the Cyberpunk 2077 timeline, just because it's been in the news a bit recently, but it's also just a good topic to try and get clear on what exactly is the connection between Cyberpunk 2077 and Cyberpunk 2020. There's been a bit of confusion about that. I was looking through articles, and I saw... I searched for Cyberpunk 2077 timeline, and I saw articles from the same website at different times, both saying, that it's the same timeline, and then an earlier article saying it's a different timeline. And so I just thought we should get the messaging correct on that. We should get just make sure everyone has a clear idea of what is the connection between Cyberpunk 2077 and Cyberpunk 2020. But we also have some Borderlands 3 drama. We talked about this a little bit on Wednesday, but there's been a lot of sort of, I would say, Twitter drama surrounding Randy Pitchford's comments about there not being microtransactions in Borderlands 3 when there actually are, and he's been very defensive about his statements because he doesn't want to be accused of misleading people. My personal take is that he just didn't express himself well, but there's been a lot surrounding that. So anyway, he kind of went off on Twitter over the past few days, so we want to discuss that a little bit. Is Sonic going to be getting fixed? This surprised the heck out of me. On Wednesday's podcast, I said it would be fantastic if the producers of the movie actually listened to the community response about Sonic's design and actually decided to make some changes, although I didn't know how realistic that would be. Looks like they're actually going to do that, and I nearly fell over when I read that, so we're going to be looking at that as well. Plus, Blizzard lost 3 million players in the first quarter of this year. 3 million active accounts, I should say, active player accounts. And so Obsidian's going to dive into all of the nerdy details on that. But we're going to start with talking about Cyberpunk. So
These are my nerdy details.
yes, absolutely. When the Mad Queen's here, you always know we're gonna go deep on Cyberpunk. So
Well, as Alots commented in the comments section, this whole mess about the timeline in Cyberpunk 2077, I believe it started when the PlayStation put out these commercials, I would call it, about CD Projekt Red. And they said that they were different timelines, which I believe was due to a terrible choice
yes,
of
absolutely.
words. And when that happened, Mike Pondsmith himself on Reddit clarified that 2077 and 2020 were in the same timeline, and that was the reason why he was working so closely with CD Projekt Red in the development of the video game. In fact, to make it a coherent timeline, they removed Talsorian Games removed the third edition of Cyberpunk and made it a what if like Cyber Generations.
okay,
And they created a new timeline that is Cyberpunk Red. And as Ali is asking in the comments, Mike Pondsmith already clarified himself, as I said before, when the PlayStation commercial went out, and recently on Twitter they are given more information about Cyberpunk Red Edition that is going to be out on August 1st. If it doesn't have delays, because video games are not the only games with delays in this universe.
mm-hmm.
So they are answering questions of the community on Twitter. I'm going to put the link to the Twitter on the comments if you want to follow them to be up to date with everything. And one of the questions was regarding the timeline, if 2077 and 2020 was in the same timeline. And they again confirmed that yes, it is in the same timeline. So it's very important to get to know the lore of Cyberpunk 2020 to enjoy Cyberpunk 2077 even more.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'll have to put on your lore playlists while I'm sleeping and try and absorb it all, just because there's so much there. There is just so much. I don't know how I'm gonna. I mean, I've watched some of your videos and gotten a handle on some of it, but man, there is so much
Well, I have
more. It's such a deep.
I have
world.
like 60 videos, and I didn't cover a lot of things.
Yeah,
I mean,
there's
I'm
still
already
more.
preparing more. Yes. I mean, I didn't talk about space yet. I didn't talk about the rest of the world, about Europe, about Asia, about South America. I only talked about the States. And still, inside the States, there are a lot of things in the lore that I didn't cover yet, like braindance. I didn't explain braindance. And because I was waiting to see what are they doing in Cyberpunk Red, because as braindance is such a broad subject, I wanted to make sure that it's closer to what they are going to do in 2077. But yes, there are a lot of things to cover yet about the law. It's very extensive, and it's so interesting. And I'm looking forward to see how they're going to, because it's been hinted several times that Cyberpunk 2077, is like a soft reboot of Cyberpunk 2020. In fact, in the gameplay, we could see that Johnny Silverhand had some relevance in the game. I personally believe that he's going to be in the game. I don't know how, because he died at the end of the Fourth Corporate War in the law of 2020. So if they are, in fact, it's not the first time that he's revived. There's another timeline that is not the one in the video game that is also something that continues Cyberpunk 2020 that is called Cyber Generations. And in Cyber Generations, Jody Silverhand is revived. He has a clone with all his memories downloaded, which I hope is not the thing that they do in Cyberpunk 2077, but because it would be so lazy to pick the solution from the what if. But yes, I believe this is not official. It's not been officially confirmed that Johnny Silverhand is going to be there. But I believe he's going to be there. And Al Cunningham, which is the lovely lady on the thumbnail and on the screen of this live podcast. Al Cunningham, who was the girlfriend of Johnny Silverhand and also one of the biggest net runners in the universe. She invented the Soul Killer, which I also believe is going to be the game. So I think that she's going to be in the game as well. But I am so glad that Talsorian Games are insisting so much on the fact that both timelines are the same in 2077 and 2020. And also that's the reason why he's working so closely with Red.
Right.
And I'm so hyped to see what they did to answer the main questions, because Red is going to be out in August, and there are like huge questions about what happened to the characters. And actually, Mike Pondsmith already did a continuation of the law. He wanted to destroy what he created to do something new, because players already did everything that could be done in 2020. So he created third edition, and people just didn't like that. He destroyed everything. He destroyed mega corporations, made neocorps. He destroyed the universe. And in Cyberpunk Red Edition, he made it softer. The world is not destroyed. Not totally destroyed. It's like how countries would be after a war. But if we have to move on to a 2077 times when they are closer to 2020, so destroyed and rebuilt, this is something that I'm very, very curious about.
Yeah, no kidding. That, and like I said, there's such deep lore in this world. It's incredible to try and wrap your head around, and I think CD Projekt Red has done a fantastic job of incorporating that into a video game format, and it looks like it's going to be fantastic. Now, I think that some of the confusion about the timelines comes from the fact that they did make some alterations to 2020 in order to make it consistent with 2077, and at least that's what I've gathered from the research I've done on it. And so there is kind of an alternate timeline, like you mentioned, Mad Queen. Third edition doesn't exist anymore, and if I'm not mistaken, some things from even the 2020 lore that does exist got changed. Is that correct?
Well, it's not exactly that they changed, they were adapted. Because in Cyberpunk Red Edition, they are going to change. For instance, some of the classes are going to be different. In 2020, we have the cops, and the cops have been, all the types of security have been put in the same character class, and now the lawmen, and include the National Law Enforcement Division, and includes any kind of security officer. And it's not that they changed in 2020. The law of 2020 until the Fourth Corporate War is untouched. The only part, if I'm not confused, the only part of the law in 2020 that is being changed is the part of the space.
Okay.
Because the part of the space happened in 2025. And the new timeline stops second edition, meaning 2020, at 2022. So everything that in space happened from 2020 to 2025 is going to be changed.
Okay.
Because it needs to reflect what happened in the Fourth Corporate War. So it's not that they changed things in 2020; it's that they evolved some things, but in Red Edition, to get to the video game. The changes that we saw in the video game with regards to 2020 are going to be the continuation of this timeline in Cyberpunk Red Edition.
Right. Okay, so there's a continuous thread: Cyberpunk 2020, Cyberpunk Red, Cyberpunk 2077, and so.
Oh, and one thing that I like to say, I believe I have the theory that the original. On the people listening to this, in case you don't know, there was a different Cyberpunk 2077 game to be developed. And they started with one idea, and when they saw that Witcher 3 was so successful, they decided to make the game bigger and to make a different game. Not the game that they could afford, but the game they really wanted to make. And I believe that the original Cyberpunk followed third edition, because one of the first images that we could see about it was, I believe it was a solo in a street of Night City, and there was a mecha, and that was one of the first images that was before 2015.
Hmm.
And I believe that doing a reboot is something that came later. This is not official information. This is a theory of mine, and I'm really glad they did that because the general players, the general fans of Mike Pondsmith's Cyberpunk, we all adore 2020, and we didn't like third edition that much. It had really amazing things like the reconstruction of Night City, which is something that in a video game would be amazing. For some things that they told about Night City, how it's going to be in the video game, it seems that this Night City of third edition, they're going to find a way to put it in the timeline. I'm not sure about that, but it looks like it. And third edition had many interesting things, but in general, the universe was so different to 2020 that creating a new excuse, putting the third edition on a what if and creating a new excuse to continue from 2020, I believe that is a great idea.
Mm-hmm. Okay, excellent. So yes, in one sense, you can look at it like there's multiple timelines in the Cyberpunk universe, but as far as what's officially canon, the official 2020 canon is the same timeline as Cyberpunk 2077. So
yeah, and I've covered this before as to why this is important. Fandoms don't like keeping track of multiple timelines. It's something that, you know, a few years ago when the whole reboot to Star Wars thing happened, and then there was of course before that the Kelvin timeline within the Star Trek series. Basically, the fandoms were like, okay, yeah, sure, let's see how this goes. And then typically how it works is the first movie or the first new stuff comes out, and people are all like, oh, that's cool, that's interesting, there seems to be some potential here. And then progressively, as it gets deeper into the content, you realize how shallow it is and how fake and how unconnected from the previous lore it is, and you start to scratch your head and go, okay, there's a lot of things being like pulled out of some random butt here.
yeah,
and then and the more they get into it, and the more they try to justify some of these lore changes, especially to how the world building works, how the science works, or how the magic or whatever technology they're using works, how more and more of that changes, more and more that just ends up dumping on what you're striving for, and ultimately it's just universally panned now as a terrible idea. And it kind of works into what we're going to talk about with the Sonic thing. It's like, hey, new universe, let's reboot the style and the look, and then the hardcore fans look at it and say, what the hell were you thinking?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and then you have idiots that come out. Jason Schreier, as much as he's trying so hard to keep his job and Kotaku afloat there, he comes out and he says, no, artistic freedom of the creator. It's like, yeah, sure, okay, let's go with artistic freedom of the creator, except when you're dumping on the entirety of the lore that came before. So there is a bit of a disconnect between what players allow and what fans allow for creative freedom, but what they're not interested in seeing when it comes to just outright trashing of the existing lore or the existing universe or the existing styles.
Yeah.
It's like,
no, exactly. You can't change it too much and expect that your fans are just going to accept that in unconditionally. Just be like, yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, that was a lot of the issue with Star Wars Episode 8. Just the massive change in gears, the massive change in direction that they took from Star Wars 7. So
allow me to interrupt you. I had to reload the podcast screen because something happened on my YouTube, and it showed me the new trailer of Borderlands.
Oh.
The commercial before the podcast was the new trailer for Borderlands.
So
and
you're
coming
like,
back
oh, I'm just gonna watch that then.
Yes. No, usually I don't skip the commercials because if I'm watching someone's video, I want the commercial to be for them. So I usually don't skip them. And going back to what you said about the fandom and episode 7 and 8, there's a huge difference when we talk in Star Wars. There's a huge difference about J.J. Abrams and whatever other director gets the hold of a Star Wars film, because J.J. Abrams is a huge fan of Star Wars. So every change that he may do, he will do it with total respect of the law and total respect to the original films and total respect to the fandom, because he's part of it. The same with Cyberpunk 2077. I mean, Mike Pondsmith stressed many times that they were fans. That's the reason why he licensed the game, because he had many offers in the past, and he didn't want someone that just used the name of Cyberpunk and made a game that was completely different. And he realized that the people that said the project, that they were fans, they were nerds. And it's very different, because when you are a fan, you want a lot of things from the original lore. Maybe you will make some changes, but any change will be done with total and absolute respect to the original material, which is completely different on Sonic. And only seeing the trailer, you can see that the people behind this film are not fans of Sonic. I believe that it's a very huge and important difference. Same thing happened with The Lord of the Rings. You could see, watching The Lord of the Rings, that Peter Jackson was a fan of Tolkien. So I believe this distinction is important. It's not the same that fans do something about the fandom they love than people that are doing some IP for the sake of money.
Well, about that, I started to do a lot of like looking around and searching, because the reply that we got from is it the director or the I think it's the director of the Sonic movie.
Jeff Fowler?
Yeah, I think it was him on Twitter who basically said, yeah, it was on Twitter. He's Flowtown or whatever it is, and he basically said, yeah, we're we saw this reaction, and we understand that people are upset, and we're gonna change it. So as far as I know, and as far as looking around and talking to some people, apparently he is a big fan of Sonic, but I think he's like, what happens to a lot of stuff when it moves into Hollywood, you get surrounded by people and art directors and other people who have their own vision for something. And
yes, but that's what I was saying. I mean, one thing is when directing a film doesn't mean that you are in charge of the production, because you have producers, you have a lot of people that may want to step in and say and make the changes. But that's a huge difference. I mean, when J.J. Abrams did Star Wars, Disney gave him total and absolute control of everything. And Episode 7 is fantastic. It's a reboot. I believe it keeps a lot of the original films, the feeling. But then Episode 8, they put another director, and everybody wanted to step in and said theirs. And we all know what happened.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It went in a completely different direction, and I think that was bad for the franchise. Completely bad for the franchise, because we had all this hype for certain aspects of Episode 7 and where they're going to go, and then that scene with Skywalker throwing the lightsaber over his shoulder, which I loved at first. I thought that was that was quite a excuse me, that was quite a clever subversion of expectations. But then I realized that was a metaphor for the whole movie, and that went just completely downhill from that. But anyway, since we've mentioned the Sonic situation multiple times already, let's dive into that. So, we discussed a bit on Wednesday. Of course, the Sonic movie trailer came out, and basically the entire internet is not happy with the design of Sonic. He looks really creepy. He looks like, I mean, they gave him a really human face with human eyes and human teeth, which just doesn't work, and it overall just looks like, a kid in blue furry pajamas. But anyway, Jeff Fowler, the director of the film, came out after all of the backlash and said, "Thank you for the support and the criticism. The message is loud and clear. You aren't happy with the design and you want changes. It's going to happen. Everyone at Paramount and Sega are fully committed to making this character the best he can be. #Sonic movie. #gotta fix fast." No kidding, gotta fix fast. So this movie is scheduled for release in November, I believe. November 8th, 2019 is the release date for the movie. And so that's 6 months away. So they've got some time, but they don't have a lot of time. And when you're talking about redesigning the main character of the movie, that's an incredible amount of work that needs to be done. Even just, I mean, depending on how drastically they redesign him. Some scenes will probably only require a re-render of the character, but if they change, for example, the size of the legs or something like that, that some people have been suggesting and doing Photoshops of, that could require some significant, that could require them to reanimate him. And so I wonder how far they're going to go with that. Now, that said...
Well, I believe the thing that worries me the most is about the people working on the film. Because they go into crunch like crazy. They are not going to be given more time. I mean, probably the budget is not going to increase because they need to work more time on this. I mean, I really feel bad for the people working on the effects department of this film.
Well, and that's been a common concern. That's been something, and that I agree is a very big concern. We don't want the VFX artists and the animators and people to have to crunch and not be compensated for the extra work they're putting in. But now, is there any evidence that that's going to be the case? Is there a precedent for that Paramount wouldn't increase the budget to make this happen?
If the film has a budget, they I don't think they're going to increase. They will see it as changes needed to happen to for the film to be successful, and probably the people working there are going to be the first that are going to be willing to make the changes because they want people to like it, obviously. But usually companies they already established the budget, and moving that is very difficult, very, very difficult.
True, but if they make the decision to redesign the main character, hopefully they would be willing to make that move. I hope. Otherwise, I don't want it to if this is going to completely destroy somebody's mental health or livelihood or anything like that, then I don't want, granted, I didn't care too much about this movie to begin with. So, if they put it out as is, I won't see it. I might, if they redesigned the character, I might actually see it just because they did that. And actually that leads into some interesting comments we've been getting in the chat here about, some of you have your tinfoil hats on and figure they did this on purpose so that they could, they created this problem so that they could fix it and get the positive hype kind of a thing. That's an interesting theory.
That's too much work. That's just too much work. Simple as that.
Well, it would be, I have a feeling that is not the case. But that would be an interesting tactic. But yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it would work, in the sense that the first impression is the most important, and the first impression, the memes are always going to be how ugly is Sonic. Now, if they change it, they won't be able to remove the first impression from people, and the memes. So as a marketing idea, it's not very brilliant if it was the case.
It would certainly be risky, and so yeah. I'm inclined to agree. That's
no.
Not the case,
I think really what they did is kind of what my first assumption is that there was a couple of art directors who basically came in and said, this style is old, it's so 90s, we have to update it for the new age, we have to do this new look and get this new thing going, and they were trying to bridge a gap between the because it's a live action movie instead of animated. They have to kind of get it in the middle of the cartoon world and the real world, and they have to put it in the middle. And again, it's like I've heard these people, I've heard these types of speeches, I've heard these types of pitches over and over and over and over again. They're just it's just constant in the Hollywood sphere. Anytime that somebody's remaking a project, it happened with what's one of the best examples? One of the best examples is probably that old 90s Batman with Mr. Freeze and the Riddler and all that stuff. And it's one of the most like worst movies ever. And when the director was, repeatedly asked about like, how could you take a movie, a series that had done so well in previous years, and how could you just trash it this bad? And to the point where all of the actors were like, yeah, this is just terrible. Like, even before it was out, they were like, yeah, I don't think, like, George Clooney was just like his eyes would glaze over whenever he talked about it. And it's just so bad. But his reaction is what you get from these Hollywood types. His reaction is, it's my vision of the thing and my interpretation of the universe. I don't need fans or people who buy comic books to appreciate this. I just want to be appreciated by my own inner circle, basically.
Well, I mean, good luck with that, and
Yeah.
enjoy the lackluster ticket sales. I mean, they're welcome to do that. They can do what they want. They could make Sonic look, basically be lime green with a banana peel and put that movie out and call that Sonic. That's pretty much what they did with the Mario Brothers movie. That should have been a cautionary tale. But if they actually want to make money, they're going to have to please the fan base. So that's the bottom line there. They can do whatever they want, and that's why. So these hot takes from, for example, Jason Schreier that you mentioned earlier, and also Brian Altano from IGN had another hot take saying, I guess respect the creator's artistic vision and don't force him to change anything. Only applied to Sekiro 2 months ago. Interesting bringing up the Sekiro thing there, but in both.
Well, I would like to hammer on this. Sekiro didn't have a huge cult following for decades and decades before it came out. It wasn't a part of a series. It wasn't part of a long journey that the fans had been on. It wasn't an upset to what had previously been done. It's a new IP, for crying out loud.
It's a new IP, and also you could argue that it's kind of a spiritual successor to Dark Souls, and so it was staying consistent with that, with the level of difficulty. Now, I'm speaking as somebody who, if they added a story mode or an easier mode into Sekiro, I would have no problem with that whatsoever. But he kind of undermines his own point here, because if the original vision of Sekiro is a very difficult game, then what's the original vision for Sonic? Well, the design of the people who created him, I would say. And so for the film directors to come along and change that, I mean, they can do that if they want. Like I said, they're welcome to do that. But it's not hypocritical to say, if you were to say they shouldn't change Sekiro and they shouldn't change, they shouldn't put an easier mode in. And I don't say that personally. But if you were to say that, and also to say they should make Sonic look like the original vision, that's not at all inconsistent or hypocritical. So I don't understand the point he's trying to make here.
I would like to say that the problem with Sonic is not that it's close or far from the original, is that it's ugly. That's the problem with Sonic. Sonic is ugly. Maybe if they created a new style that was the evolution of the original, but what was cute to see, nobody would have complained. But it's ugly as fuck.
Right. I mean,
That's the problem.
Sonic's style has evolved over the years. Obviously, when he was first designed, he was I don't know if he was in the 8-bit or 16-bit era, but they had limited pixels to work with. They obviously evolved his character. Actually, A+ Start is a channel that I really enjoy. He's got a series called Son of a Glitch, but he has also got a series called, what's it called now? Low Poly. That's what it's called. Where he just goes through the evolution of video game characters over the years, and he did one on Sonic. And yeah, Sonic's design evolves, but you can still tell it's Sonic.
But I mean, sometimes this is the thing about art. Things either work or they don't work, and the new image doesn't work. And I think that there's a lot of people working on the film. They should have seen it by themselves. It's that is so creepy. It's so totally and absolutely creepy. And Pokemon, They did exactly the same. Pokemon, the design is different from the originals because it's a very 3D thing. And I believe that Pikachu works. Well, all the Pokemons that I could see in the trailer, they all work. They all work
Absolutely.
in. They don't look creepy. They don't. But
Mhm.
Sony doesn't work. It just doesn't work.
Detective Pikachu undeniably looks like Pikachu too. You know,
Yeah.
Yes.
the design is altered somewhat from the original like 2-dimensional version. You have to do that anytime you transfer when you translate something from 2D to 3D. It's actually can be a very complicated process. But yeah, it's undeniably Pikachu.
Yes, and not only that it works. It's not creepy, and it's
Exactly.
visually appealing.
Yeah, you're right on that point too. It's cute. He's freaking adorable. I'm looking at a picture of him
Yes,
right now. He's like a big stuffed animal.
and Sonic is fuel for nightmares.
Exactly. It's like those old movies where they would, before CG was a thing, they'd put a person in like an animal suit. And they'd be running around. It would look horrible and creepy. It's like they were like, let's do that, except let's make it CG instead of an actual person in a suit, because we want to spend 10 times more on it for some reason. Yeah, fantastic choice there. But anyway, I mean, it's. I think what's most fascinating about this entire situation is that they're actually showing interest in listening to fan feedback, and I don't know how much they're going to be able to do in the 6 months before the movie releases, but it's it's fascinating to me that they're actually like, okay, you don't like this, let's see what we can do to make it better.
Yeah.
And again,
Another
Yes,
another
great. This is
interesting
great.
thing that I want to mention here, because Ali in the chat brought it up, is that like you can clearly see he was wearing, like, one of the reasons why I think they shrunk down the shoe was to make the shoe look like an actual shoe that Nike would come out with, which clearly has the Nike symbol on it. So it's clearly product placement, like from the get-go.
yep.
So I think it's kind of disturbing that you have this kind of like this like obvious attempt to change the spirit of the design to better connect and to better fit you, the viewer, with a product that was there to be placed as something to sell you. So it's like, yeah, that's where again this whole argument of creator's vision is absolute bullmore,
Yeah, the
because
creator's
it's
vision is big old dollar signs, basically.
yeah, yeah, and you can tell. And again, I've heard far too many of these conversations in far too many places to know that the redesign of his shoes basically came down to, hey, if we take them from their current design, which is not something that a person would wear, to something where it's far more like human like, we can get a huge kick-ass deal from Nike. It's like, and that's immediately where the defense of, oh no, it's all about their choice, it's all about their artistic style and creation, that's where it immediately falls apart. And
Yeah,
you
because
can't
there are
defend
those
that.
other influences. Let's not kid ourselves. The product placement, the brand deals, those are definitely features. Those are
Well,
definitely
it's
factors.
it's amazing how product placement works in films, and because it's not totally related to the brands, it's most related to a part of production that deals with product placement in general. So you want cars because you don't want to pay the rental for the cars. So Audi. I don't know who is the brand that provides cars in Sonic. You want the cars of Audi? Well, I give you the cars of Audi, but if you want them, you have to show these shoes that my friend on Nike is going to put out on the market. I mean, this is a relation between production and the people at the companies that manage product placement and how they work, and it's a mafia. It's so amazing how it works.
Huh.
And yes, probably even it doesn't have anything to do with Nike. It's just maybe the person who wanted to give them the cars made them put the shoes. Go figure. You never know with product placement.
Wow. That's bizarre. But yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely.
I've seen a couple of documentaries of films where they have problems with agencies managing product placement, and they were shooting. I can't remember the film. It was an action film, and in the middle of the film, because they refused to make one product placement of another product that I don't remember, all the cars in the picture were taken away, so they didn't have cars to keep shooting. So they had to accept to put the other product placement.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that's about all there is to say about that. You are listening to the Augmented Reality Podcast, and we love seeing all of you so active in the live chat. If you want to keep the conversation going after the live broadcast, we welcome you to join our Discord community. You can find the link to that in the description below. It's a place where you can chat with us and other Triple S fans about all the things we love to talk about and stay up to date about everything we're doing here at the Triple S League. Click the link below to join, and be sure to say hi to us in the welcome channel. Lots of great comments in the chat today. That is, we're getting to the ones we can, and we'll continue to do so. But we're going to move on here to talking about some of the Borderlands 3 drama. Now, I don't want to sort of jump on the train of hammering on Randy Pitchford, but I do want to kind of clarify what's been going on here. So we discussed this a bit on Wednesday, so sorry if this is kind of rehashing the point, but at the Borderlands 3 reveal, Pitchford basically said on stage that Borderlands 3 is not going to have microtransactions. Now, he claims that in context, it should have been clear that he was only talking about loot boxes and other, what he calls free-to-play tactics. And I'm willing to believe him that that's what he meant, but again, my stance is that he didn't express himself well. But instead of just coming out and clarifying after the fact, he got really defensive and started going after people who were posting news articles and things about that. So I don't think that he had the classiest of responses to all of this. But I've got a tweet from him here that I want to read. He said, what is incorrect and muddled is the consequence of printing the words won't have microtransactions without also printing the words I said immediately before I said that. My words confirmed DLC, including heads and skins, then denied free-to-play tactics. Context is critical.
Yeah, well, context, and, we've defended Randy with a few things before. We have not defended Randy when it comes to Colonial Marines, or when it comes to Duke Nukem, or when it comes to the other things that he does that are less than shady. What we've defended him on specifically is being labeled as a again with the whole don't want to get demonetized. We've labeled him. We've defended him from being labeled as some really horrendous names, some really, really horrendous accusations that have come out about him, and we've said, look. There's this whole concept that is getting further and further out of the realm of what is considered normal and okay, and that is that you're innocent until you're proven guilty. It used to be that was like, imperative to society, and it's becoming less and less of a thing. And we've said before that Randy didn't deserve to be labeled something that he probably isn't, based on the evidence that we have so far. However, we have definitely called him out and said that the dude likes to overinflate, he likes to exaggerate, he likes to do a lot of things that are not necessarily 100% accurate or clear or what have you. Generally speaking, he likes to overshoot some of his stuff, and I mean that happens. That happens with everything. It happens with movies. It happens with any kind of art form where it's hard for you to be objective about your own work, right? So that is something that we continue to hold still. But Randy, when you say we're not adding microtransactions, but we're adding DLC. Well, yes, there's a lot of ways that you can interpret words, but in this particular context, when you say no microtransactions, just DLC, then we're expecting to get, what we would have gotten from most games, like, 8-9 years ago, which is, consistent DLC packs for new content.
Yeah, story
or
content, quests, that kind of
major
thing.
quests. The DLC packs that we had in Borderlands 2 was, the Tiny Tina stories, the bunch of that other stuff that was really good, really well done. All those little expansions for story content. That's what we're thinking of. We're not thinking of 5 different skins on day one for each class, or collecting helmets and hats and heads and other stuff that, again, it's like that's like Fortnite and that's like Fortnite and Overwatch stuff.
Well,
It's like,
yeah,
come on.
there are 2 problems with this. One, I mean, there are commonly accepted definitions of these words. When you say DLC, that means something bigger. That means an expansion for the game, not just some kind of, although, it's kind of been expanded to mean like, okay, technically, if you're buying a skin, that is DLC in the most technical sense of the world. But when we say that, when we're talking about that, we don't say DLC, we say microtransaction, because that's what that is. Plus, the other issue is that is a free-to-play tactic. As you pointed out on Wednesday, Simon, and have many times since. That's what free-to-play games do. They give you a free game, and then they hope that you're going to buy skins and heads. And now it's true that he wanted to make it clear that there's not going to be like an in-game currency that you can buy, and that is also a free-to-play tactic. But there are tons and tons of free-to-play games where you buy cosmetics. So to say we're avoiding all free-to-play tactics, that's not even really true either.
Yeah, and again, there's a lot of microtransaction games out there that that people have hammered on, that in some cases, some of them have really light mechanics, but then they have really heavy implementation. So what's a good example here? So we've got the straight up you get what you pay for type mechanics, like Fortnite, or like Anthem. Anthem is another good example, where it's like, here's what it is, here's what you buy. But in both of those scenarios, you end up spending $20 for a basic skin. Like, that's
Right.
a lot. If you collect just half of the generalized skins, that the top tier skins throughout the year, you're spending as much as you would on a brand new game. Then you have other things like Warframe that are really light-handed, even though it's very similar. Then you have other things where it's like in Overwatch, where it's like, it's mostly RNG. It's like okay.
Yeah, loot boxes. Yeah.
Another good example is the Division, which I got really, really upset with, and it's one of the reasons why I'm waiting for the big patch to come out with the new raid content and stuff before I get back into that game, and that's primarily because you have loot boxes in the game, but you can collect the same thing over and over and over again.
Oh, so if you already have something, they don't remove it from the pool of things.
Yeah, they don't remove it from the pool. So me and Dadbot Gaming were in there, and he opened up like 10 of them just by saving. Now you can earn them in game, so that's nice. But he opened 10 of them, and I think he got like 8 of the same identical things that he'd already had.
Wow.
And the reward that it gives you for when you get a duplicate item is like, we're going to give you some experience, and the experience is maybe like 1 or 2% of what it takes to open up another one. And it's like, you might as well give me nothing. Like,
Right.
Seriously, you might as well give me nothing. You're giving me something that's so piddly. Like, and I've played phone games where it's like, here's your free chest, and it alerts your stupid cell phone, and it's constantly ringing, and there's this giant glowing thing, you're a free spin, or you're a free chest, and then you open it up, and it's like a gray item that you get 10 of when you just auto complete a mission. It's like, Yeah, that was so not worth my time that it's insulting. It's like, good lord, why they would do that? And so this is the thing, is like, whenever you have microtransactions, whenever you have these loot boxes, whenever you have a secondary currency that you buy with real money, things can get dicey really, really quickly. And I feel that Randy was hiding behind the DLC terminology and the goodwill and the good faith that they have built up with previous stuff. And it's also true that Randy gives away codes like crazy. This is also true, and it's also a good thing. However, in this particular case, it just came out wrong. And instead of saying, sorry, let me clean this up, he goes into full on attack mode, like just from the get-go. And it's like, dude, with the way that the rollout was, with the difficulty that you've had, with all the issues that are present, attack mode might not have been a good idea. And maybe, I know it's his way, I know it's his format, but still, like, maybe step back, take a breath, and like, this is why you're the boss. You're supposed to be able to take these things with stride. You're supposed to be able to, like, walk and chew bubble gum at the same time. It's like, you should be able to have a measured response to this, and then maybe if there's more like negativity that comes out afterwards, then follow up with it, with a full broadside. But in this case, it's just I just don't think that it was warranted, and it
Or
really
even
puts a
if-
bad flavor in my mouth, because again, it's like, aside from the fact that I can't really play the game as is, it's like I don't, it's just not something that I want to see, and it keeps on getting more and more frustrating. And it's like,
Yeah.
ugh.
I mean, it would be more understandable if some news organization, if the headlines were Randy Pitchford lied, well, then I could see him legitimately, like, it would be more justified for him to have such a visceral reaction to it. But now, some people were accusing him of that, but they were mostly random Twitter users. The news coverage that I saw was mostly, here's what he said, but here's what's actually happening, and he took that to imply that they were accusing him of lying, which I don't think was the case. It's not how I read it. Immediately off the bat, I don't know if I'm alone in that, but I just assumed he misspoke or didn't express himself well. I know I didn't assume he was lying right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And I mean, that's part of the issue. It's like, it's just why.
Well, the thing is that this is
about it this way. Yeah. Go ahead.
this is gaming, and we are trained to believe they lie to our faces. So
well, that is true.
I don't believe that people want to be suspicious by nature. It's just that this is how things won't work in gaming. We are lied all the time, constantly. So when a gaming company says no microtransactions, and then you are going to assume he's lying, because gaming works like that, not because you believe he's a liar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's a very good point. We are trained that way, which is why people were instantly suspicious about Jedi Fallen Order, as they should be, when they came out and said, no microtransactions, no this, no that. Yeah, I'm still being optimistic. Maybe I'm being stupidly optimistic about it, but I don't know. I guess I just so badly want a good Star Wars game.
Yes, but again, can you hear me properly? Because the
Yep.
Discord says that I have issues with the audio.
I'm hearing you just fine.
Yeah, no, you're coming through fine.
Well, the thing is that I like the comment that Jim Sterling made about this. It's exactly what I said before. EA trained us to not trust them, so everybody's suspicious about the new Star Wars game.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a pity, because everybody's waiting for another KOTOR again, because the days of the good Star Wars games are past. People feel like that we are not going to be able to see a new game of Star Wars, and it's a pity, because technology evolves and games are better every day. So yes, a new good Star Wars game would be a great news to have. But yeah, again, we don't trust them. Why? Go figure. And that was sarcasm.
They have fully earned that lack of trust. They worked hard for that.
Yeah, they worked really hard for the lack of yes, and it feels bad because sometimes companies like EA or what oh I can name so many examples that I'm even sad that I can't do it. Are the ones to blame that when someone maybe just made a terrible choice of words and wasn't explaining himself properly, we are all inclined to believe that they lied when probably maybe it's just what you said that it was a bad wording.
Hmm.
And it's a pity that we are so mistrustful in for we don't trust the gaming industry. We don't do that for a reason.
Yeah. Mohit Kumar says, Randy made the truth go poof. Yeah, it was a magic act. That's what it was.
Yeah, and well, I mean, and he sets himself up. He's his own worst enemy at times, and it's rough, and it's like again, you don't have to, you don't have to like the guy to like the games. Sometimes, and I can personally attest to this. Sometimes the boss has to be kind of a dick in order to get stuff done. You don't get stuff done without pushing boundaries from time to time, and you certainly don't. You certainly can't manage to do anything great without pushing some kind of boundary. So, so for this, I understand people find him abrasive, but and I'm not apologizing for him not having a handle on that, but at the same time, it's like, you know, you do have to be prepared to deal with some of this kind of stuff because of the type of industry. There's lots of people. There's in people in. I was going to name some companies, but I won't. There's a lot of developers in some companies that I have zero respect for. On a person-to-person level, I find them rude, ignorant, arrogant, destructive to the gaming industry from my personal standpoint. But overall, I have to admit that sometimes their stuff works and sometimes their ideas work. And as much as I'll argue and debate it, I can't just not be cordial to them or not or just turn my back on them just completely. It's like you do have to have some level of putting up with the more, especially when it comes to art. I mean, art is one of these things where it's like you're always going to have the kind of the weird people out there, the people who are like, they're what's the word? They're just kind of like, they're just kind of like odd, right? And they're sandpaper to you, and you're not interested in dealing with them. But that's the world of art, right?
Right.
And,
Shannon
and this is
Vega.
and this is why
Yeah.
and this is why we do defend the free speech and the free speech concept of art. Art has to be defended, because if you don't defend that, it's a very slippery slope to suddenly everything's censored according to whoever happens to be the censor and is making those decisions. It's like,
Right.
yeah,
Shannon Vega, thank you so much for the super chat. She says, have a beautiful, amazing, wonderful morning and rest of the day. I'm constantly amazed by the people in this fandom. So that's all of you. That's all of y'all. So, yeah. Thank you so much for that. And you are far too generous, because I saw the email this morning that you joined us on Patreon as well. So, thank you. That's all I can say. Thank you. I'm glad you appreciate this content so much that you're willing to do that for us. Mess Meg has I love this message from Mess Meg here. If you hit the table, then a scissors makes sound. I'm not entirely sure I'm following that, but apparently this is a Polish saying that means if someone yells that he is being accused of lying when nobody does this, it means he's planning a scam. Very interesting. I don't know what that has to do with scissors and tables, but I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. I don't know. You're a little closer to Poland than we are, Mad Queen. Do you get the translation there?
Well, I don't know. I don't know all the Polish sayings, but it's funny because even though we are corners of Europe with a lot of cultures in the middle, there are a lot of sayings in Polish that are very close to Spain, to the Spanish. Because in Spain there are also a lot of sayings, but an insane amount of sayings. That's where we call it granny's talk. usually because grannies always say hello. It always express themselves in sayings.
So you call it granny's
But no,
talk. So
yes.
that itself is a granny talk.
No, I never heard. I never heard this saying though.
Okay, well that's interesting, but that's an interesting concept. That is an interesting concept. That yeah, if you're getting defensive about lying, and nobody's actually accused you of it, what are you planning? What are you scheming behind the scenes? All right.
Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm a person. Well, maybe no, I am. And I tend to not believe in the worst of people at first until they prove that they actually are the worst.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone is accused of lying and he is not lying, I tend to believe that the problem is that this person is afraid that is misunderstood.
Mm-hmm.
Not that they are planning something.
Well, and I think in general we don't give each other enough benefit of the doubt, especially in anonymous. When we have that illusion of anonymity, like on the internet, or when you're out driving, or that kind of thing, we always think the worst of somebody. But then when you actually get face to face with someone, you get that personal connection, and then you're more inclined to give them the benefit of the doubt, and that's why it's such a bad thing. In addition to the loss of things like body language, it's a very bad thing to argue something via text, because you lose out on that personal connection, and then you're always thinking the worst of this person. You're always reading the worst possible connotation into whatever they've typed, and so it's probably. I mean, I think this is a huge contributing factor to why there's so much vitriol on the internet. But anyway, in any case, I think you're right. We should give each other the benefit of the doubt more. We should not automatically assume the worst when somebody does or says something. The world would probably be a much better place. Anyway, that's my hot take for the day. So, Blizzard apparently lost 3 million player accounts in Q1 of this year, which is an insane amount. That's 8.5% of their total player base. This is quite huge. And so, Saib, you have some thoughts on this.
Before you start, did anybody ask them if they have a phone?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all the people who don't have phones. They were like, I'm out.
Yeah.
So it's quite disturbing. Their overall income has dropped recently. More of their income is being derived from Candy Crush than ever before. So I can see why they're chasing the mobile dragon, so to speak. They want the money, they want the fame, they want they want the stockholders to be always impressed with that, and mobile is the way that they think they're going to get this across. They also just recently banned and then proceeded to unban a huge segment of their population that played WoW. WoW has been going through some massive problems. This expansion started out with so many hopes and high dreams, and they had seen well over 1 million people come back just before the game launched. Those were numbers that I got to see, but I haven't seen anything since then. And no doubt, because immediately after it came out, there was like this really quick honeymoon phase, and then it went to the toilet just so fast. It like more and more problems started to be spotted. There's so many issues, and then just one thing after another, they just started to crash and burn left and right, and now they're down apparently as far as WoW goes. They're down to the lowest numbers, and again, they haven't put out these numbers, so we can't verify this. But from what I'm hearing, they're down to the lowest point they have ever been with WoW subscriptions, aside from when they initially first launched. So we're talking like less than 1.5 million players. Apparently, there's lots of people who are reporting that their guilds who, for years, for well over a decade, had always managed to hold at least 20 people online at the very minimum. Usually at the high points, there was always 100 or more online. some of them are reporting that they log on and there's like 1 or 2 people online. Like that's how bad it's gotten. Overall, just the overall discussion on team channels and like TeamSpeak, Discord, that kind of stuff, it's all down. Massive numbers. It's just dropped off the face of the planet. And then they went and they banned people who were using a program to increase the general visual appeal of the game, mostly by doing armor edits. There's a really funny meme picture out there, where it's like the person who designed this thing doesn't know how anything in reality works. And so, these modders came and they came up with a solution and they fixed it. So I spoke with the guys who make the application that launches the game. I actually spoke with them, the head guy directly of the, and I want to make sure I get this right. It is called if I can find it, it's called the Arctium patch. And so the Arctium patch was being used to do this, but it also kind of created a backdoor, so some exploiters and some people who were using Autobots and not the Transformers, the auto pathing stuff. They'd been using it for kind of more nefarious things, and it is against TOS. But for the past, this stuff has been around as long as WoW has been out, and so naturally, like, what had happened is WoW has basically turned a blind eye to people doing this passive modding stuff. But then for some reason, they decided last week to ban everybody who was using this. Reports from one of my contacts at Blizzard was like, at first they didn't have a solid ID on how many accounts were using it. And then they started the ban wave. They started processing the bans, and it very quickly went from like what they thought was going to be like 10,000-20,000 to they were encroaching on 500,000 bans when they suddenly pulled the stops and said, whoa, okay, no, we can't ban 1/3 of our remaining population. Like, this will kill the game. So they went back and they unbanned everybody. And instead they put out this post saying, don't you dare use this again. We understand that some people were using this for less nefarious things, but, and they shook the finger at the players. Mm-hmm. So after speaking with the I keep messing up the pronunciation. Names are the worst, I swear. So the Arctium people are now basically saying that they're going to be looking at some way to fix this to make it so that it can't be used for the more nefarious stuff, but still be used for the passive stuff. Because again, it's like Blizzard knows that they can't ban this many people straight off. And there was a lot of like just massive amounts of negativity being thrown towards a company whose product has already received probably the most negativity that it has in a very, very long time. So basically, then their first quarter for this year comes out, and it's not good. It's first of all, they hit their targets, which whenever somebody says, hey, I had a target for my company, for my stockholders, we told them that we were going to do this much business this year, and we totally hit that number. Anybody who tells you that is a moron and an idiot and is lying to you and to their stockholders. It's your own set bar. So you're saying, so what happens for every company, and every company does this, they talk to their financial guys, they talk to the marketing guys, they talk to everybody, and they're like, okay, what do you think we will reasonably do if we're very successful this year at the top? And the one guy will say, probably like 1.2 billion. And then he'll go to the financial guy, and the financial guy will go, yeah, about 1.2, 1.3. And then they'll go to, some more of the marketing analyst people, and they'll say, okay, how much? And probably 1.1. So then they'll go to their board and they'll go to their stockholders and say, we're expecting to hit 1 billion in profits this year. And it'll be amazing if we hit that. We're going to knock it out of the park if we hit 1 billion. Well, what has he done?
He's undersold it, so that
he's undersold it massively, because he knows that as long as they can hit that 1.1 at the very minimum, he'll be able to return to the stockholders and say, hey guys, look what we did. We 10% over what we were expecting to do. So this year they said they were expecting to do 1.7 billion in profit, in money, and they hit 1.8, just barely 1.8. So for anybody who's smart, who's sitting around the desk going, they didn't even do more than 10%. Like they really cut it close. And the answer to that is yes, they did. They almost didn't hit their own shortcut, attempt at doing the whole. We've talked about it before, the Star Trek. What's the engineer called? The Scotty trick, where it's like, yeah. This will take a week for me to do, and well, you have 3 days. Okay, sure. When you already knew it was going to take you 3 days anyways. It's like, because then it makes you look like you're a genius. So again, anybody who knows business knows that this statement is a complete pile of garbage, and it's just dumb and silly, and it doesn't, and it's just dumb. It's just dumb to kind of hide behind this. So what does this actually mean? Well, it means that Blizzard and Activision are having a bad start to a first year, and the fact that they lost almost between this year and last year, they've lost 16% of their player base. Lost, as in, like, even though they've had new accounts created and new people are picking up their games, they've lost 16% in the last 2 years, in the last year and first quarter. So in the last 5 quarters, they've lost 16% of their player base across all of their games. Even in Candy Crush, the numbers have been going down. So if they don't pull this around, and they have nothing new planned, here's the thing. They don't have any new games planned aside from the vanilla WoW server. They have 0 planned for this year, which means that they might have one of the worst years on record for a really long time. And if their next products are, hey, look at this amazing cell phone game, and that cell phone game doesn't do nearly as good as Candy Crush, if that cell phone game just falls on its face like the ones EA has put out recently, well, that'll probably be the beginning of the end to Blizzard. And so they got this thing called their operating margin. It's like how much money they're actually making over what the cost of maintaining the product and selling the product is. Their cell phone game runs at about 33%. The rest of their products average between like 16 to 24%. All it takes to make them go bankrupt is for the bulk of their stuff to start only delivering between 5 to 0% profit margin, or to go into the red. That's all it will take to basically make the company look like it's not doing good, that it's floundering. This will make an investor panic. People will start calling on rapid, massive change, which of course won't happen because of the way that the power is structured at Activision and Blizzard. So if they lose out, and if they dip into the deep red and they don't have a plan to go forward, and none of their fixes for their products that are currently out there manage to take hold, then we're looking at most likely the first major fracture of the company. Well, not the first major fracture. The first major fracture was when they lost Destiny. They lost the Destiny contract outright. That's the first major fracture. The second major fracture would be like them coming out and saying, hey, we're down by like 30-40% of what we were expecting to make. We're actually in the red this year. That'll make people panic. That'll make investors start to pull their stock. That'll make people start to really, really worry, and justifiably so, because they don't have a product plan. They've got a terrible, basically clone of what is a ton of already existing mobile games when it comes to Diablo coming out sometime next year, and it's garbage. So yeah, it's going to be a rough year for them. I don't envy anybody working there, especially with the fact that they fired 8% of their staff too. So it's like it's rough. Now they are the good news is that they are hiring a fair number of new programmers and developers to push and to create more content, but we're not going to see the benefit of that for well over a year. So we won't even see the positive effects of that. They don't have, as far as we know, they don't even have a new IP planned. They've got a handful of reboots coming. That's about it there. How long can they continue to camp on the success of Warcraft 3? I don't know. It's been almost 20 years now. They've been riding a singular wave for 20 years. Their StarCraft 2 launch didn't do as much as they thought it would. It was financially successful. It was not a kingmaker by any stretch of the imagination. It was not a kingmaker. So yeah, that's the general results. It's not looking good. It's looking kind of crappy.
Now, do they have the capital to ride this out, or do you think that this is going to cause
unfortunately
problems?
no. This is so. Activision is one of these companies, and we've talked about this before. Bethesda can ride out a decade of zero products because they have banked the vast majority of their profits. The company can run off of just the if they stop making any money today, Bethesda could sit on and run on their products for probably the next, like I said, probably the next decade. Because what do when they get a huge cash flow? They invest it wisely into into long-term stock options and long-term growth options, and they just sit on it. I think, and again, Bethesda's a super private company. It's not owned by anybody, or it's not owned by by any stockholders. There's a handful of very small private investors, very, very small private investors. The majority of the company is owned by themselves. They don't have to report anything. Their yearly tax statements are all private. You cannot access this stuff. So nobody really knows exactly how much they're worth or how well they're doing. But we know that it's good. We know that it's really good. We know that the people who run the company, they're really old-fashioned in the way that they look and view how money works. They are very, very, very careful on how they handle that kind of stuff. And basically, it boils down to, okay, we are going to, what's the term? So basically, they look at the generalized, long-term plan, and they basically bank pretty much everything. I don't want to get too much into it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So they're just old-fashioned. They're old-fashioned in the sense that they save for rainy days. As far as we've been able to understand, which again, they're super private, so you don't actually have that information. You're just going off of what you can dig up, which isn't very much.
Right.
But in the term of Activision, they spend. They're big spenders because they think that, like, they have a war chest, sure. And yeah, it might be pretty big, but their operating costs are also really, really big. Activision's a big company. They have a lot of costs that come in. 33% profitability is really solid. So that's every dollar that they spend, they're making 33 cents off of. They're making $1.33 back. So that's really high. A lot of companies, that Walmart operates between a 5 and, I think it's like a 5 and 10% revenue. So it's like if they lose 10% of their business in a year, that hurts them deep, like deep. So yeah, it's more tight for some than others, and then for others it's a little bit less. But in this particular case, yeah, it's rough.
And it's looking like there are, there are some emotional responses to this. There are some people who are very connected to Blizzard games in the past, and that, HDK Gaming, for example, in the chat here says they need to. No, wait, not that comment. Sorry, I don't usually get too serious in these convos, but this company is personally connected to my childhood, and we want to see them succeed. And hopefully for the sake of their products that people really value, hopefully they can pull it out and restructure and make things better. We don't want to see them dumping 8% of their staff. Like that may have been necessary for them to, in order to keep running or to run efficiently. But hopefully they can restructure themselves in such a way that they don't have to do things like that.
Yeah. Well, so in that regard, I would like to respond with the general consensus that it's a lot of these games mean a lot to me personally as well. As much as I hit on them for running off of the success of Warcraft 3 for 20 years, it still is a good game, but I would like to see them like actually progress and actually like continue to move forward. I used to be a big WoW player, real big fan, and I got back into it very briefly to kind of see how things were, and they weren't great. They have a chance to turn it around. They're starting to they flew in a bunch of these people who are very critical of them, and they said, what can we do to make the game better? And they actually sat them down and asked them, what can we do to make the game better? And a lot of people responded with, this is a good move. This is a solid direction. So yeah, I think there's always a chance that they could turn it around, but their increased focus on cell phone games, they're moving some of their best developers away from WoW and existing projects and putting them on other stuff. The fact that we've gotten, the fact that they've canceled a bunch of stuff, that they've basically trashed, a bunch of games and walked away from them is really disturbing. But yeah, it's concerning. It's concerning overall. But
Double Asterisk says they will release StarCraft Mobile this year. Don't Zerg have phones? And actually, something spooky happened earlier. I was thinking while Cy was talking, I was like, I wonder if they'll ever make World of StarCraft. And literally 2 seconds after I thought that thought, Notional in the chat said something to the effect of, I wonder if they'll make World of StarCraft, or maybe they should make World of StarCraft. That's what it was. So that was really weird. That was really kind of a spooky moment. All right, and then Double Asterisk says, nostalgia does not mean a company is the same now. That's very true, and we do kind of have to come to terms with that. But at the same time, we love, they're running on the same IPs, and so we want to see them succeed. And this is the issue. We're going through some of this kind of some similar things with BioWare right now. We all love classic BioWare. We love their IPs that they put out, and it's just a shame to see them being mistreated like the way they are. Andre Velasquez says, love the thumbnail art. That's from the trailer. Yeah, that's actually from the original teaser from 2013 of Cyberpunk 2077. And in the teaser, there's actually bullets flying all across the screen, which I edited out. But yeah, that is a shot from the teaser, and that the lady on the thumbnail is Alt Cunningham, which we talked about earlier. So some deep lore connections there. All right, what were you saying? What were you saying there?
So I think honestly, they could improve WoW a lot by doing more of the stuff that worked for them, and then moving away from things that haven't. I would love to see them introduce 10 races and to really improve the existing ones. It'll be also really interesting to see where they go with the story, because it's the story right now has just been floundering for this current expansion. it's been really obvious at times, but yeah, it's just it's definitely something that I'm keeping my eye on, especially how they're gonna finish this current expansion, as far as like how the story goes, and apparently we're gonna be seeing that here in a couple months at the very least. So yeah, it'll be interesting. Rage 2 from of course Bethesda and ZeniMax has posted a hilarious little video on Twitter just a few minutes ago. It's called "May the 4th Be With You," which of course is a reference to May the 4th, obviously. But they have two of their like raider dudes having this kind of like mock lightsaber duel. So that's pretty funny. Just saw that pop up on Twitter now, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. So yeah,
I'll check that out. We are pushing up against the end of the show. I know Mad Queen. People in the chat are wondering where you are. I know you messaged us that you don't really have anything to add to this particular topic, but in order to round out the show, I thought I'd give you last word. Anything you want to touch on? Anything you want to talk about? With
well, I just wanted to pose some question about the thumbnail and how Cunningham. I hope we will see her in the game.
I hope so too. And with the fact that she's been included in the art now, we haven't seen her in the new trailer, but Alt Cunningham, yeah, I mean that. I imagine we will, given the importance of that character. All right.
Oh, let me answer a question on the. Well, Andre Velázquez, I appreciate. And the question of Mark Jackson, Dave McQueen, didn't you have a Cyberpunk video several months ago where you noticed that one of the newspaper in the trailer had a corporate death reported, but the age of the corpo was retconned? Yes, and I am not sure if that was a mistake or that was on purpose. It sounds like on purpose because it's something that was right in our faces. By the way, the corporate that was dead was Antonio Lucchesi, the co-founder of Militech. And on the trailer, on one scene of the past E3 trailer, when there's these boosters that try to rob a shop that has several newspapers, you could read that the Valentinos were doing something on Pacifica, and that Antonio Lucchesi died, and the age, he was 25 years younger than in the law. I believe it was 25, not 100% sure, but he was younger. And I am not sure this was a mistake or this was on purpose. If on purpose, then something happened in between, but I don't know. I don't know if I'm being paranoid, if there are mistakes that I'm taking for things that are on purpose. I really don't. I'm so confused. The more information I have about the game, the more confused I am.
There is so much in these worlds, and to keep, I'm amazed that they can keep it all straight as is, let alone, yeah. I'm amazed they keep it as straight as they do in terms of all the information and like all of the deep lore. So I mean, kudos to those folks over at CDPR and also at Artel Sorian Games, Mike Pondsmith, and Andre Velázquez. You just made Augmented Reality podcast history with the third super chat of the day. Thank you so much. Very much appreciate that. That's in terms of sheer number of super chats, that's the most we've ever gotten in a single podcast. Thank you so much. Andre says, no need to thank me, just keep it coming, guys. Well, we intend to. We absolutely intend to. Why is my outro music muted? There we go. That's better. All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you, everybody, for supporting this show. Don't forget to slam that like button before you go. That really helps us. Also, if you're listening after the fact, leave comments below. That really helps with the algorithms to recognize that you appreciate this content. And I especially want to thank our Patreon supporters, Old Man Manson, Shannon Vega, and our 2 anonymous supporters, our channel member, Captain Dammit, and all of you who donated with the super chats today. We really appreciate it. And, those of you who are in a position to do that, we do super appreciate that. If you're not in a position to support, financially, that is totally fine. I mean, we totally understand that, and there are a lot of other ways you can support the show: liking, subscribing to the channel, leaving comments, and sharing it around. And if you share it within your other communities, bring in more listeners. That helps us immensely. So we really appreciate that. We just love what you guys have helped us build here. So thank you so much. If you're listening after the fact on SoundCloud, iTunes, or Spotify, we thank you for your engagement on those platforms as well, and feel free to join us on Wednesday evenings and Saturday mornings for the live show where you can interact with us and other listeners and be a part of the discussion. And I want to thank the Mad Queen for joining us today. We really appreciate having you here.
Thanks to you for having me.
Thank you for bringing your Cyberpunk knowledge to our conversation and your general gaming knowledge, insight, and your experience from working in the film industry, that kind of thing. Really appreciate that. Check out the Mad Queen Show's channel for tons of fantastic Cyberpunk content. And you can also check out our YouTube channel for game guides, reviews, comedy, news updates, and tons more quality gaming content. My name is Ashenity, and on behalf of Cyberpunk and the Mad Queen, thank you so much for listening, and we will talk to you next week.